What is going on, everybody? Welcome to episode number 3 of Talkin Track, the newest motorsports show dedicated to all you wonderful people here in South Florida. I'm your host, Armany DePaul, the voice of FMU Athletics and a writer for the Daily Downforce. Now, this episode is going to be a little bit different from the previous episode in the sense of we're going to be covering some news that, I'm not kidding, dropped less than 24 hours ago. So really, because of that, I haven't really had much time, if any time at all, to really put notes down, gather my thoughts, and really assess the situation thoroughly. So pretty much what you're going to get is just my thoughts right out of the gate. What do I think about each of these situations? What do I think about each of these breaking news that's been happening? You're going to get I'm not going to say not my genuine thoughts, but you're going to get my thoughts basically right out of the bat. So, with all that being said, we got some NASCAR to talk about, and we got some IndyCar news to talk about. The NASCAR news, I'm not kidding, just dropped maybe 30, 45 minutes ago. The IndyCar news has been out for about less than 24 hours, but there was a lot to cover with both of these news stories. Okay, I'm not kidding when I say this news that you're seeing on the screen here literally dropped 30, 45 minutes ago, and that is, like you see on the screen, Martin Truex Jr. For all you NASCAR folks out there, you guys know who he is, but for those of you who don't, he's the current driver, the number 19 Toyota Camry for Joe Gibbs Racing in the Cup Series. 34 career wins. He won the championship back in 2017. A sure ballot Hall of Famer in the NASCAR Hall of Fame when he does eventually retire, which looks like it's going to be at season's end. You know, this has been news that, or really just a rumbling that's kind of been going on for the past, really since the beginning of the next gen era. You know, many people have been wondering, when is Truex going to retire? When is he going to hang it up? It really feels like since the 2022 season, any year could be Truex's last. You know, he could have retired at the end of 2023. He could have retired at the end of 2022. And now it looks like he's finally set to do it at the end here of the 2024 season. But before we talk about why exactly he's going to be retiring, you know, when I used to have my own racing show, my other show, the Motorsport Ministry, typically when a driver announces retirement, I like to dedicate some time to acknowledge all the accolades that the driver has accomplished, really to point home how big of a deal it is that, you know, one of the greatest that the sport's ever seen is going to be stepping away. And Martin Truex Jr. definitely deserves to hold that title of one of the greatest drivers that has ever stepped foot in a NASCAR Cup Series car. I'm going to read you guys some of the stats here for Martin Truex Jr. just so you can guys get an idea of how good this guy has been. Because with Truex specifically, you know, you can really chalk up Truex's career in two different halves. You can go from his rookie year all the way back in 2006 all the way to around 2014, and then 2015 to now. It's almost like a completely different career. So let's go back to that first half of his career from 2006 all the way to 2014. So for 2006 to 2014, this is what Truex's stats were looking like. He had 2 wins, 2 playoff appearances, and more or less was kind of just your average, ordinary driver. Now, Truex was no slouch coming into the Cup Series back in 2006. He was coming off the back of back-to-back, at the time, Busch Series championships, now would be known as Xfinity Series championships. So you got a driver who's won back-to-back titles, which, I mean, in any sport is such a feat that's near impossible. I mean, the Chiefs just won their first back-to-back Super Bowls for the first time in, I believe, 20 years? And, you know, imagine that in racing. To do that in back-to-back years for any series, let alone any division, competition level, you name it, to go back-to-back in the championship is extremely difficult. So Truex more than definitely earned his ride in the Cup Series. The problem is when Truex got into the Cup Series, it was kind of wrong place, wrong time. He was driving for a Dale Earnhardt Incorporated team that was just a few short years away from shutting down. Then he switched over to Michael Waltrip Racing at the time when the team was still trying to figure themselves out and were at best a mid-pack team. Yeah, he made the playoffs once per year. He made the playoffs with DEI in 2008, and he made the playoffs with Michael Waltrip Racing in 2012, and he probably would have made it in 2013 if it wasn't for the Spingate scandal. You guys up if you really want to know what all that's about. But more or less, kind of wrong place, wrong time is what I'm saying. You got a really good, really talented driver that just always found himself in the worst situation. You feel like you've accomplished everything. You feel like you're ready to take that next step up, And then once you finally get there, it feels like the whole world is kind of, falling apart. I mean, I know I could say from my personal experiences, I've had times where, I feel like finally ready to take that next step. And when that next step comes, things don't go exactly as you plan. So that's kind of what happened in Truex's case after 2013. So come 2014, really the last year of this first half of his career, he made probably the most important change of his entire career. But in order to do that, and to get to where he is now, he had to go through a little bit of a slumber. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. So 2014 comes around, he moves over to Furniture Row Racing, which at the time was a 1-win Cup Series team. They were going to make some moves, and you're going to see later on that this move would turn out to be the best. But in 2014, it looked like it was going to be at the end of his career. 1 top 5, 5 top 10s, only 1 lap led all season long, and finished 24th in points. Then we jump into 2015, and it's like the team completely turned around with the addition of crew chief Cole Pearn. 22 top 10s and an appearance in the Final Four. Then the team switches over to Toyota, and then the rest is history. Multiple wins after multiple wins, a championship in 2017, multiple Final Four appearances, and Truex really was able to establish himself as one of the premier drivers in the series. I mean, if you don't believe me, folks, from 2006 to 2014, Truex only had 2 winning seasons. From 2016 up until now, 2024. Actually, I'm not going to count 2024 because the season's still going on. This can change. But from 2016 all the way to 2023, he's only had 1 winless season. That came in 2022 when he missed the playoffs. 1 winless season, folks, from 2016 to 2022. It is difficult to just get 1 win in your entire career. And I'm just going to read off the amount of wins he's got from 2016 to 2023. 4, 8, 4, 7, 1, 4. That winless season in 22, and then 3 last year. Folks, I mentioned this in the last episode where winning a race is extremely difficult. So to have that sort of consistency to where you're winning consistently, let alone multiple races consistently. I mean, folks, those 8 and 7 win seasons, those are some of the most wins in NASCAR history in a single season in the modern era. Some drivers would be lucky just to get 1 win in their career. Imagine getting 8. He basically had to hold a solid career just in 1 season alone. And he's done that multiple times. The turnaround that this guy went through from being, like I said, a middle-of-the-road driver to being one of the premier drivers of the sport is fascinating. And let me tell you something. If there's any driver who's probably going to get, let's say a Netflix documentary in the future, it probably will be Martin Truex Jr. Because again, to go from the lows that he had at the beginning of his career to now ending his career on such a high that he probably didn't think was even possible after 2014. I mean, the story, you can't write a script better than that, folks. So why exactly is Martin Truex Jr. retiring? Well, there's a couple reasons that, people have theorized. Truex has always said, to the media that, he's not the greatest when it comes to making decisions. He likes to prolong things, but I really think it's going to come down to just the fact that, is he really enjoying the grind? I mean, folks, the Cup Series, the NASCAR Cup Series is the definition of a grind. It's the longest season out of any professional sport. I mean, you're talking about a season that goes from mid-February to the beginning of November, with more cases than not, only 1 off week. And you're traveling all over the country, and from what it sounds like next year, all around the world. This is one of the toughest schedules just to get through from beginning to end. I mean, there's at the end of the season, there's kind of that burnout feeling from everyone in the industry, because again, they've been going at this for so long. And, if you're Martin Truex Jr., you've won 34 races, you have a championship, you're going to make the Hall of Fame, you're going to go down as one of the greatest drivers of all time. Why not just call it quits? I mean, Truex is 44 years old. I believe he's the oldest active driver in the Cup Series. This is about time when drivers usually decide to hang it up, around their 40s, whether it's their early 40s or their late 40s. I mean, Harvick retired last year, and I think it was 46 or 47. So, again, does he want to do that grind anymore? I mean, I guarantee you, if he didn't have a 3-win season last year, and he didn't look like one of the championship favorites, he probably would have retired at the end of 2023. Tell you the truth, I'm surprised he didn't retire at the end of 2022. Only 4 top 5s and a 17th place points finish for a top driver, that would more than likely be enough to say, yeah, I'm gonna hang it up. But he stuck around until this year. And like I said, this year, it's kind of been a mixed bag. You know, he's currently 5th in the points, but 7 top 10s in 16 races. He does have the 3rd most laps led out of anyone in the series. However, I believe half of those came from one race back in Richmond. And then on top of that, he hasn't won. I mean, Denny Hamlin's won 3 times. Christopher Bell's won twice. Ty Gibbs has been in position to win. Tyler Reddick is in position to win. These are all Toyota guys that still got a lot left and are consistently winning. Truex hasn't been able to consistently win really in the past since the next gen era began. I mean, we're currently in the midst of the 3rd year of the next gen. He only has 1 winning season. Granted, it was a 3-win season, but 3 wins in 3 years. Yeah, it averages out 1 win a year, and so far winless in 24. I assume he's going to break that. You don't lead the 3rd most amount of laps all year, and you don't sit top 5 in points all season long without winning a race. Yeah, 2022 happened, but that's an outlier year for really the whole series as a whole. So I imagine he's going to win, but again, does he want to do that grind? Does he want to travel the country, the world, you know, put himself in these really dangerous situations, constantly grinding over and over as a 44-year-old? When he's clearly on the tail end of his career, does he want to go through that grind? I mean, Harvick didn't want to go through that grind anymore after last year, and we've seen drivers retire left and right really for the past 7-8 years. You got Jeff Gordon in 2015, Tony Stewart in 2016, Dale Jr. and Matt Kenseth in 2017, Jimmy Johnson in 2020. You know, these guys, they know when it's time to hang it up. And for Truex, when you've been flirting with retirement for the past 2-3 years, eventually you're just going to pull the plug and say, I'm done. This is it. That sounds like what it's like it's with Martin Truex Jr. We'll go through in a later episode who we think could take over the 19 car. There's already a report coming out that it could be Chase Briscoe who can land the 19 seat. I got my thoughts on that, but again, I'll save that for another time. But yeah, that's it with Martin Truex Jr. Does he really want to go through that grind as a 44-year-old driver? And I already mentioned the names. All of them retired in their 40s. Once you kind of get to that age, you don't really want to go through that anymore. And for Truex, it's the same story. And I wish Truex a happy retirement, though. If this is true, I do wish Martin Truex Jr. a happy retirement. Again, one of the greatest career turnarounds in NASCAR history. And that's what Truex is going to be known for. We always put these drivers on a pedestal. And Truex, he's going to be put on the pedestal of how to turn a professional career around. All right, so that was probably about as breaking news as we could get. I mean, the news probably dropped less than an hour before I pressed record here today on Thursday afternoon. So let's talk about some news that dropped yesterday, albeit, you know, towards, you know, maybe less than 24 hours, but still breaking news nonetheless. And that is that IndyCar will be moving over to Fox starting in 2025. Now, on the surface level, if you guys listened and watched my episode, my last episode, where I really criticized Fox's portrayal of NASCAR, on the surface, you might think that this is the death sentence for IndyCar. You know, I've been on the record saying how IndyCar, their promotion or really lack of a marketing effort, and just the fact that they really don't seem like they put the effort to actually making the series grow. Now you put them with with the broadcast partner that for their biggest motorsport brand treats it like a joke, more or less. You put those two in together and you think that IndyCar is basically doomed, but actually a little bit more in a pot than even I originally thought it was going to be. So let's dive into it. Again, this news just dropped yesterday, so we don't got all the information, but I'm going to give you the information that we do have, and I'm going to give you guys my thoughts. So, IndyCar and Fox Sports, a historic media rights partnership to where all the races on IndyCar, so IndyCar has, I believe, 17 or 18 races, are going to be aired on the main Fox. If you guys don't know exactly how television works, you got your main networks. So we use Fox as an example, and then you got your cable shows. In Fox's case, it would be FS1 and FS2. Typically, especially with racing, kind of the races would be split into half of the races will be on the big network and the other half will be on the cable network. And as you guys know, cable is a dying breed. So the more races are on cable network, the worse it's going to be. And NASCAR's actually have more races on cable in their media rights deal next year. So IndyCar's actually going to have more network races than NASCAR, believe it or not, on Fox. So let's see it at that light for first of all. I've mentioned before how IndyCar, they really do need a push. they needed to do something to try to get themselves out there. And while yes, their coverage on NBC has been, in terms of production, has been phenomenal. In terms of the booth, you name it, it's been phenomenal. At the same time, you've seen the numbers. I mean, how can a series survive when on cable television, yeah, it's on the USA Network, but on cable television when you're getting 330,000 viewers? How's a premier racing series or premier sports series supposed to function like that? I mean, this isn't small-time collegiate athletics we're talking about. This is a nationwide sport. How are you going to survive on 330,000 people watching a product? Especially with product as expensive as racing. So there's that. But now with Fox, IndyCar doesn't have to worry about having their races go to cable television because all their races are going to be on the big network. I mean, if you're an IndyCar fan, you should be ecstatic. You got all of your network, you got all your races are going to be on the big network in front of all the biggest eyeballs. You don't have to worry about an FS1, an FS2. You don't got to worry about a Peacock. You don't got to worry about a USA Network. Well, it's important because the IndyCar season is going to end right as the NFL season is about to begin. And I imagine most of us know just how much of a juggernaut the NFL is when it comes to the sports landscape. You don't believe me? Well, Christmas has been an NBA tradition for the longest time, and then the NFL just swooped in and took it for themselves in the past couple of years. So typically, yes, it sounds like, oh, we're just trying to avoid the NFL, but this has been something that people have been really asking NASCAR to do as well. To try to end their season before the NFL season begins, because when the NFL season begins, that's when the ratings usually take a dip for NASCAR. So the fact that IndyCar, who already struggles to get viewers as is, the fact of the matter is the fact that they're not going to have to compete with the NFL now starting in 2025, and that way they can get all the viewers that they need. Now you might be thinking to yourself, won't they have to compete with NASCAR? Not exactly. Racing fans, more times than not, they're not really competing. Really, Formula One fans, and in some cases some NASCAR fans, are the only ones that I've noticed where they will just stick to their series and not even touch anything else. I'm personally not like that. I watch as much racing as I can. I watch NASCAR, F1, IndyCar. I mean, I'm going to announce a sports car event next month up in Sebring. So I try to consume as much racing as I can. And really, that's what 90% of racing fans are as well. They're not going to pick and choose what series they're going to follow. If it's racing, they're going to tune in. So IndyCar doesn't necessarily have to worry about competing with NASCAR in that sense. And actually, I really think it could be a benefit for both series, because you can have IndyCar get promotion during NASCAR races, and then you could have NASCAR races be promoted during the month of May when IndyCar takes over because of the Indianapolis 500. Can you imagine the cross promotion? Fox holding the Daytona 500 and the Indy 500 rights now? I mean, that'd be incredible. Now, of course, there is some concern, is Fox going to do to IndyCar what they've been doing to NASCAR? But we did talk about in the last episode how, with all the cuts that they've been making, theoretically they should have more resources. We now know where the resources are going to be going. So in theory, you would think that, first year covering a new series, they'd want to come out with a bang. I really don't imagine that Fox isn't going to want to treat IndyCar like a joke, considering they forked out more money than NBC was willing to offer, in addition to putting all their races on network television. I don't imagine that's the case. I imagine Fox is going to treat IndyCar seriously. Now we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, when 2025 hits, we'll find out for ourselves, but who knows? If they take their IndyCar product seriously, also because of the fact that IndyCar actually does a lot of their own production in terms of, the TV sense, with the cameras and the quality, you name it. Really, all NBC did was provide the producers, the on-air talent, and the graphics. And I imagine Fox is going to be the same thing. So you got that. Maybe we'll light a fire in Fox to maybe, we're taking this racing series more seriously. Maybe we should take our other racing series more seriously as well. And folks, remember this. FS1 is basically the old Speed Channel. FS1 is essentially just a reincarnated Speed used to be. The Speed Channel where you found all your racing. IndyCar, NASCAR, F1, sports car, you name it. All the way back in, the early 2000s. That's what FS1 essentially is. That's what FS1 was created as a prelude to. So those are my initial thoughts on the IndyCar going to Fox in 2025. I do think that there is a lot of positives for this move. I mean, you got a series that's getting more money. They're going to have all their races on network television. The cross-promotion opportunities are really limitless now. And I even mentioned the fact that Fox is going to hold the Super Bowl next year. Yes, you heard me right. Fox is going to have now the Super Bowl, the Daytona 500, and the Indianapolis 500. 3 of the biggest sporting events in the world. 2025 is a big year for Fox, and it's a big year for IndyCar as well. Let's see if those two can live up to the promise. So that's going to do it for this episode, folks. I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, this one was a little bit different just because both of these news stories broke 24 hours ago, or in the case of the Truex news, in my time, at the time of me recording this, really about less than an hour ago. So kind of off the wall a little bit, but you know, you guys got my thoughts right out of the gate. But I hope you guys enjoyed listening as always. Thank you guys so much. If you guys want to follow us on social media, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, Talkin Track Show. And of course, follow us on Remix Sports Media as well. That's going to do it for us here, folks, on Talkin Track. We're going to wave the checkered flag. This is Talkin Track here on Remix Sports Media.